If you think you know your wife, think again. I thought I did too, for 7 years. Let me tell you what I found in a hallway I was never supposed to walk down. Stay until the end because the way this finished will surprise you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now so you don't miss what's coming next. I still remember the weight of those white roses in my hand, a dozen of them, wrapped in brown paper, slightly crushed from the elevator ride up. I had picked them up at a corner shop 2 blocks from North Star's downtown office, because Amber loved white roses, and because she had canceled dinner on me again. 3rd time that month. I told myself it was work stress. I told myself she was busy. I was good at telling myself things. My name is Arthur Hale. I am 48 now. 10 years ago, I was 38, managing regional furniture sales out of Columbus, Ohio, and married to a woman I trusted without question. Amber was 36 then, sharp, polished, the kind of woman who remembered every client's birthday and never showed up anywhere unprepared. She managed brand partnerships at North Star Consumer Brands, and she was good at her job. She was good at a lot of things, it turned out. The lobby receptionist looked up when I walked in and then looked away fast. A middle-aged assistant near the front desk stopped mid-sentence. Neither of them offered to help me. One said Amber was in a closed meeting. The other nodded like that explained everything. Before you keep listening, share in the comments which country you're watching from. And let's continue. I set the roses on the counter and pulled out my phone to text Amber. That was when her forgotten phone, sitting right there on the reception desk in a small wicker basket, lit up with a message. I could not help but read it. We need to be careful. No name, just that. I picked up her phone without thinking and started walking toward the executive wing. Nobody stopped me. I knew the layout. I had visited twice before. I passed a row of glass offices and slowed down near the end of the hallway, where the corner suite belonged to the CEO. That was when I saw it. On the floor just outside his door, a small gold earring with a tiny rose engraving. Amber had worn those on our anniversary 3 weeks earlier. I crouched down and picked it up, and something in my chest went cold and quiet at the same time. I stood back up and looked at that half-closed office door. Her perfume was in the air before I even pushed the door open. That specific vanilla and cedar mix she wore for important meetings. I had bought her the first bottle myself. Now it was drifting out of Randy Cole's office like it belonged there. I heard her laugh, soft, familiar, the one she used when she was relaxed and comfortable. I had not heard that laugh at home in months. I pushed the door the rest of the way open. Amber stood near the window with her left hand at her side. No wedding ring. 2 coffees sat on Randy's desk, both still steaming. Between them, a white rose, same variety I had just left at the reception counter downstairs. On the edge of the desk, half tucked under a leather folder, was a hotel key sleeve with a room number written in pen. Randy Cole stepped out of his inner office a few seconds later. He was 57, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who had spent decades learning how to own every room he walked into. He looked at me without flinching and used my first name like we were old colleagues. "Arthur," he said, "this isn't a great time." Amber turned around. She looked tired and something else, like she had already run through this moment in her head, and none of her prepared versions were working. I asked her directly whether she was sleeping with him. I kept my voice steady. I was not going to give either of them the satisfaction of watching me unravel. She did not answer right away. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then started saying something about context and pressure and things I did not understand. Randy watched her with his arms crossed, completely calm, like a man observing a transaction he had already controlled. "You don't have a right to be in this office," Randy said. "Whatever you think you saw, you should take a breath before you make this into something it doesn't need to be." I looked at Amber and waited. I held up the earring so she could see it. She recognized it immediately. Her jaw tightened. She still did not answer my question. That silence told me everything either of them was going to refuse to say out loud. I set the earring and Amber's phone on Randy's desk, next to the white rose, and walked back out the door. I was halfway to the elevator when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message was short. "Security has been told you are unstable and made threats. Leave now before they arrive." I did not know who sent it. I did not stop to find out. I kept walking, hit the lobby, went straight to the parking garage, and sat in my truck with the engine off. I was not going to give Randy Cole a scene to point at. I was not going to hand him anything he could use. I had been sitting there maybe 4 minutes when I heard heels on concrete. Amber came through the stairwell door and walked straight to my window. I rolled it down. She started with excuses, and I let her go for about 30 seconds before I reached into my jacket pocket and held up the hotel key sleeve I had picked up off Randy's desk when I set down the earring. She had not noticed me take it. The room number was still there in pen. The hotel name was printed across the top. The excuses stopped. She admitted it then. 11 months. She said it like she was reading a number off a form. 11 months of an affair with her CEO while I covered dinners alone and told myself she was just working hard. She said Randy had promised her a senior director promotion. She said it started during a conference in Atlanta. I asked her about the weekend. She told me she was visiting her sister in Pittsburgh. She looked at the floor of the garage. That was the first trip, she said. Then her phone buzzed in her hand. She looked at the screen and flipped it toward me without thinking. It was Randy. She answered it on speaker before I could say anything. His voice came through steady and measured. He said he knew I had taken something from his office. He said my name had already been raised with building security and 2 senior employees. He reminded me very calmly that every person on that floor had now heard his version of events, and that my version was going to be very difficult to make stick. Amber looked at me while he talked. She did not hang up. She did not argue with him either. I handed the phone back to her, started the truck, and drove straight to Nolan's house on the east side of Columbus. Nolan Briggs had been my closest friend since college. I knocked on his door, told him I had been wrong to ignore the warnings I had noticed and dismissed, and asked him for a quiet room for the night. He stepped aside without a word and let me in. The anonymous text from the garage had come from Paige Mercer. She reached out the next morning with her real name and asked if I would meet her somewhere public. We sat at a diner on 5th Avenue that afternoon, 2 booths from the window, and she talked quietly and steadily for almost an hour. Paige was Randy's executive assistant. She had worked for him for 6 years. She knew where every body was buried, and she had finally decided she was done protecting his work. She told me that within minutes of my leaving North Star's offices, Randy had called a brief, informal meeting with 2 floor managers and Amber. He told them I had shown up erratic and made vague threats, and he asked them to be available if building security needed statements. Amber had supplied specific personal details, things only a spouse would know, that made the story sound real and grounded. The combination was designed to make me look like a problem before I could make either of them look like one. Paige pulled out her own phone and showed me the messages. Randy's instructions were direct. He wanted Amber removed from the visitor log for that day entirely. He wanted it done before end of business. I sat with that for a moment. Then I told Paige about my doorbell camera. I had not checked the archive yet because I had not thought to. I checked it that evening from Nolan's kitchen table. 2 entries during business trip windows Amber had mentioned as mandatory travel. Randy's car, both times. He had been inside my house. Paige called me the next morning with one more thing. Randy had done this before. A junior marketing manager named Brenda Salas had been in a similar position 4 years earlier. Same promises, same pressure, same quiet exit when he was done. Paige had already spoken to Brenda. Brenda was ready to talk. I did not post anything online. I did not call Amber's family or mine. I did not send anything to Randy's board contacts or forward his name to a journalist. Every instinct I had was pushing me toward noise, and I made myself go quiet instead. Amber had left me a voicemail the night after the garage. 14 minutes long. She cried through most of it, and inside those 14 minutes she described the affair in detail, admitted helping Randy frame the story about my behavior, and said she had done it because she was afraid of what he would do to her career if she did not cooperate. She said she knew it was wrong. She said she was sorry. I saved the file in 3 places and said nothing back to her. Randy sent me a text 2 days later, a cash offer. He did not call it that directly, but the language was clear enough. He also reminded me that North Star's board had trusted him for 11 years, and that no angry husband with a hotel key sleeve was going to change that. I thought about what I actually had. A 14-minute confession, doorbell footage, Paige's screenshots, Brenda's testimony, and a cash offer that confirmed Randy understood what was at stake. I found Celeste Cole's contact through a mutual acquaintance, Randy's wife. I sent her the voicemail, the doorbell clips, and Randy's text offer. I sent them because she was his spouse, and she had a right to the same truth I had been handed. Not for money, not for damage, because she deserved to know. Celeste called me herself 24 hours later. She was calm in a way that told me she had already suspected something and had just been handed the confirmation. She mentioned, almost in passing, that Randy was scheduled to receive a Family Leadership Award at North Star's spring banquet in 3 weeks. I asked her if she planned to attend. She said she would not miss it. That same week, Paige and Brenda agreed to be there too, each of them carrying what they personally knew, what they had personally seen or received. No coordination beyond showing up and telling the truth. Celeste put my name on her guest list, and I wore a gray jacket and sat near the back of the North Star banquet hall on a Friday night in April, with 400 people around me who had no idea what was about to happen. The room was done up in navy and gold, open bar, round tables with white cloths, the kind of corporate warmth that costs a lot of money to manufacture. Randy was on the program for the keynote and the Leadership Award presentation. Amber sat 3 tables from the stage. She looked like she had not slept well in a week, which seemed about right. Randy took the podium after dinner and talked about integrity. He talked about what it meant to build something lasting and to lead with consistency, and to honor the people who depended on you. The room applauded in the right places. He was good at this part. During the applause after his second point, Celeste stood up from the front table, walked up the 3 steps to the stage, and stopped beside him at the microphone. Randy turned with a social smile that froze the moment he saw her face up close. She held up her wedding ring, set it on the podium in front of the microphone, and asked him, in a clear and even voice, to explain the messages he had sent to her husband's accuser threatening his reputation. The room went still. Brenda stood up next. She introduced herself by name and described what Randy had promised her 4 years ago, and what had happened when she stopped being useful to him. She was brief and specific and completely composed. Paige stepped forward from near the side wall and told the room that employees at North Star had been instructed to describe me as unstable and dangerous, and that those instructions had come directly from Randy, with personal details about me supplied by Amber to make the lie harder to disprove. Amber pushed back from her table and started to say that Randy had pressured her into it, that she had been afraid, that she had not had a real choice. I reached into my jacket pocket, walked to the nearest unattended microphone stand, held my phone to the microphone and pressed play. Her voice came through the room for about 45 seconds before the audio team cut the feed. It was enough. Her own words, her own voice explaining, calmly and clearly, that she had helped design the story after I had walked out of the office that day. The board chairman, a short man named Gerald Park, walked onto the stage and placed his hand over the microphone. He thanked the guests and said the program was concluded for the evening. Randy looked at Celeste. She did not look back at him. People at nearby tables turned away from Amber. Neither of them said another word that night that anyone near me could hear. North Star's board opened an internal review the following Monday. By the end of that month, Randy Cole had been removed from his position for abusing executive authority, misusing company resources, and creating a hostile environment for employees who had interacted with his personal conflicts. The formal announcement was careful and dry, the way those things always are, but every person at that banquet understood what it meant. Amber resigned 2 weeks after the banquet. She did not fight it. Co-workers who had watched her supply Randy with personal details about her own husband had already made the office unbearable for her in the quiet ways workplaces can manage without anyone filing a report. Celeste filed for divorce within 60 days. She called me once more to let me know. She was not looking for anything from me, just closing the loop. She mentioned that Randy had floated the idea of a public comeback through a consultant friend, framing the banquet incident as a personal family matter that had been handled. That attempt fell apart when a 4th employee, someone none of us had coordinated with, came forward on her own and described the same pattern from 3 years before Brenda. Randy Cole had been running the same play for a long time. The only thing that changed was that this time the women he had used and the husband he had tried to bury all ended up in the same room. Amber and I finalized our divorce that fall. No drama, no contested hearings. The attorneys handled the paperwork and I signed where I was told to sign. I sold the house in Westerville. I did not want to keep living in rooms that held 7 years of things I had believed that turned out to be constructed. I moved to a smaller place near Nolan, on the same side of Columbus, close enough that we could share a driveway if we wanted to. I kept my furniture sales territory and worked it the way I always had, steadily, without shortcuts. It turned out the job I had treated as ordinary was the one thing in my life that had been exactly what it appeared to be. Looking back, I had seen enough signs early enough that I could have asked hard questions 2 or 3 years before I found that earring on the floor of a corporate hallway. I chose to trust instead of verify, and that choice cost me time, money, and a version of my own life I thought was real. I do not spend much energy being angry about it anymore. Walking away with documented proof and a clean name gave me something that no amount of staying and arguing would have produced. It gave me back the ability to trust my own judgment. That turned out to be worth more than the marriage. Would you have handled what I did the same way, or would you have done something different? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this hit home, like the video and subscribe. We put out new stories every week.